15 years after a famous professor openly mocked a young black student's aspirations to become a doctor. Nobody could have predicted the unexpected turn of events that would follow. What happens if the person who attempted to destroy your aspirations and hopes now depends on you to survive? This heartwarming true story is characterized by bravery, humiliation, and an unexpected second opportunity. Tell us where you are watching from before we head back. Make sure to subscribe if this tale resonates with you, because I have something very unique planned for you tomorrow. For Career Day in 2007, Jefferson East High School opened its auditorium. The scene was set by attentive teachers, homemade posters, and impromptu tables, amidst shabby backpacks and poor hopes. A reserved kid paid close attention to everything that was said, with a stopwatch in hand. The organizers distributed the presentation schedule as the students debated potential options. The room went quiet as the microphone moved across the front row, while everyone awaited brief updates. Something else was simmering in the back rows. Davi held up the sheet of paper with his objectives on it. He stated calmly that he aspired to become a brain surgeon, researching cortical maps and assisting patients while volunteering at the local community hospital. His primary motivation was his grandma Alzira, who suffered a stroke. He added that he had prepared a timetable with internships, tests, scholarships, and money. Read scholarly publications, gone to therapy sessions, and practiced virtual dissections. I will follow every necessary step, he said, aiming for residency, clinical research, and prestigious universities. Taking the microphone, Professor Claudio Mendez let out a big laugh. He maintained that less than 2% of neurosurgery experts are black, and that just 7% of applicants are accepted into medical programs. He raised concerns about the mounting expenses, debts totaling over $300, demanding work schedules, and a weekly workload exceeding 80 hours. He recommended realistic alternatives, like working as a lab technician. The room listened with a mixture of surprise and irony, in an attempt to quell the aspirations that were born there. The educator ended by pointing to projected graphs and repeated the phrase, "overwhelming probabilities." Some co-workers made jokes, laughed, and mimicked fictitious lab codes, without the guts to stand up for him. Others, particularly the girls at the rear, watched intently. Dr. Livia Nascimento, the counselor, came to the door, took notes, and made a note of potential interventions. Davi gripped the paper, took a deep breath, glanced at the worn school sign, and told himself he would keep on. He was given a folded paper that read, "Keep going," and another hand scrawled, "Impossible." The bell rang as he sat down. The boy got to his feet. Destinies would change at the next meeting. Claudio projected numerals onto an improvised plastic mirror once the room's commotion subsided, citing medical approval data. He emphasized that elite specialty are rarely attained by young people from the periphery. Each percentage became a sentence of despair as his words sliced through like razors. He spoke in a cold, dry, and calculating tone. Some co-workers shrank, while others agreed in whispers. Davi kept his stance, but his eyes were burning. Every figure put forth was an attempt to steal a future, not just a statistic. Davi held up his notepad, filled with careful notes. On Saturdays, he displayed his community internship, summer classes, hospital program registrations, and dates. He confidently stated that the chief neurologist at the local hospital had already written a letter of support for him. He also mentioned that, in addition to school handouts, he studied anatomy texts independently. His voice veered between conviction and terror with every utterance. He made it apparent that he was looking for a genuine opportunity rather than approval. Even in the face of suppressed laughter, Claudio grinned wryly, crossed his arms, and shook his head slowly. He made fun of harsh schedules, massive debt, and competing scholarships. He likened the boy's dream to moments in films that trick viewers, as if surrendering were instinctive. He ended by inquiring about his plan B. His quick laugh reverberated through the fractured walls when he heard Davi's denial. The class responded collectively, with some silently and others mockingly. The humiliation took on a face, a voice, and a weight there. Davi closed his eyes and recalled his grandma Alzira's statement that imposed boundaries are a reflection of other people's worries. As the laughter subsided, he quietly penned 3 words in the corner of his notebook. I won't stop. He inhaled deeply, raised his chin, and gazed at the antique wall clock. Despite their seeming slowness, the hands had the potential for retaliation. A spark erupted inside him, turning suffering into fuel. Publicly, his future had been questioned, but accomplishments would provide the answer. Rain streamed down the little apartment's windows that night. Renata, Davi's mother, arrived weary and still wearing her hospital uniform, leaving the bags on the table. She inhaled deeply and gazed at her son, who was engrossed in borrowed books. Dispersed notes were illuminated by the weak lamp. His grandmother's coughing in the chamber that had been converted from the living room shattered the stillness. Despite her fatigue, Renata grinned proudly at the boy's perseverance in the face of everyday adversity. When Davi's grandmother, Donna Alzira, saw that he was exhausted, she would always call him. She would lean on her homemade cane and say, "Come here. Read to me a little," using his anatomy book. The youngster would describe in layman's terms what he had discovered about blood vessels and neurons. Those who try to diminish your dreams are only talking about their own limitations. She would reply with gleaming eyes, recalling her late husband as she reiterated that giving up should never be an option. These nightly discussions turned into a necessary custom. Sitting next to him, Renata adjusted her glasses and kept up with his studies. She remembered the incident in which her son, who was still a youngster at the time, identified his younger sister's appendicitis before the medical professionals did. With conviction, she stated, "You see beyond the symptoms." She informed him of the hospital's neurologist, who had commended Davi's commitment while he was undergoing volunteer observations. Her remarks emphasized that skill alone was insufficient without discipline by striking a balance between severity and tenderness. The boy took in all the words of support. When the evening was over, Davi hung a homemade poster that said, Dr. Davi Morera, neurosurgeon. He wrote weekly commitments, financial targets, and registration dates below. He made a precise plan as his mother put away the cleaned uniforms and his grandmother napped. The tiny space appeared to change into a dream laboratory. They won't stop me, he muttered softly, holding the closed notepad while the storm raged outside. The flame inside him blazed unquenchable. Davi kept his eyes focused on borrowed textbooks, while the majority of the neighborhood's youngsters spent their hours on the basketball court or playing video games. He was still studying brain graphs and making diagrams in scrawled notebooks when the clock struck 2 in the morning. His discipline was silently witnessed by the inexpensive coffee cups that lined the table. His breathing became labored as he turned each page, but his resolve burned in his mind. His goal was to stay ahead of the game at all times. He hardly closed his eyes before dawn before preparing to assist his Uncle Paolo at the supermarket. He took orders, cleared shelves, and bagged groceries. Although the salary was low, every penny saved could be used for future school fees, books, or even transportation to lectures. He viewed every shift as an investment. Even when he was exhausted, as he organized boxes, he said, "One day, I will make up for all of my sacrifices with victories." Sweat trickled, but his mind was racing. Operation room, white coat, university. Tape holding up a homemade poster left markings on the tiny space. It said, in big letters, doctor exam dates, scholarship reminders. and motivational phrases from medical books were displayed next to Davi Moreira, a neurosurgeon. The boy gazed at the poster each time exhaustion threatened to overtake him. It turned into his beacon, his guide, and his amulet. It was a public declaration of war against the numbers and ridicule that attempted to thwart his goal. And it was more than just a piece of paper affixed to the wall. He would lie down by the window and listen to the sound of distant automobile horns mingled with the rain before he fell asleep. He would silently vow to save lives, to respect his grandma, to pay back his mother. While gazing up at the dark sky, every dedication turned into unseen fuel, converting fatigue into vitality. He was aware that the journey would be difficult and full of closed doors. Nevertheless, he vowed to stay on course. Tomorrow will be harder, but also more victorious. The Jefferson East School gym was converted into an experiment corridor, and the flame in his chest never went out. Each student defended their opinions on a colorful panel that lined up side by side. Davi showed in early, put on his basic lab coat, and set an anatomical model on the table that was put together using aquarium tubes and a modified pump. He had notes in his pockets that he had edited in the wee hours of the morning. He could feel his students' eyes following him with each step. Some were interested, while others were disbelieving. He inhaled deeply. It was time to establish his value. The project's title, Neuroplasticity and Post-Stroke Recovery, was printed in big letters. Davi highlighted how the time of the intervention affected the outcomes and provided an explanation of statistical graphs and neural diagrams. He observed his grandmother's therapy sessions and used data gathered from the community hospital. Calmly, he pointed to makeshift electrical connections that mimic blood flow. The judges, who included visiting physicians and university lecturers, listened intently. Many thought it was too daring for a 14-year-old teenager. In spite of this, they noticed something. A neuroscientist, who was one of the assessors, leaned forward, startled at the computations that were displayed. If anyone had assisted with the analysis, he inquired. Davi strongly retorted that he had only been allowed to view patients while studying alone. He received admiration for his technical proficiency and honesty. His peers, unable to dispute the caliber of his work, watched in wonder and made hushed remarks. The gym's commotion died down. Everyone paused to listen to the discredited boy for the first time. Now the quiet was acknowledgement. Everyone assembled for the award ceremony at the conclusion of the afternoon. After the announcement of third and second place, the gym erupted in cheers as the microphone highlighted the words, "First place, Davi Moreira, with the project on neuroplasticity." Even though she was weak, his grandma Elzira was there and wept quietly. His mother excitedly stood up and applauded. The child carried the straightforward but significant prize as he made his way to the platform. Every chuckle he had had before served as fuel for his trek there. Claudio continued to lean against the gym's side wall while the cheers reverberated. His face stayed still, devoid of any smiles or cheers. But his eyes followed Davi as he made his way to the platform. All he did was straighten his tie among his jubilant co-workers. The scene felt heavier than he would have preferred. Once the object of mockery, the teenager now carried a prize, standing in front of everyone. The teacher was unable to deny the accomplishment he was seeing. Claudio came up to Davi as he was gathering materials after the wedding. "Creative mechanism for your model. Ingenious for your age," he said in a low, almost disinterested voice. The youngster thanked him while attempting to understand what he was trying to say. There was merely a cursory recognition. No enthusiasm. "Keep going. But remember, competitions don't reflect the reality of medicine," the educator said before he could reply. And he left a sense of approval, but also skepticism as he strolled down the hallways. In the meantime, Davi was surrounded by university assessors who praised his presentation's clarity and statistical accuracy. In fact, one of them said he wished to accompany him in any upcoming scientific introductory courses. Another praised him for having the guts to tackle such a difficult subject. It was clear how Claudio's coldness contrasted with the expert's excitement. Co-workers remarked among themselves after noticing the difference. The weight of his prior skepticism appeared to be dispelled by the evidence, with every statement made by the judges. Davi recalled his teacher's reticent stare as he kept the award on the makeshift table at home. That had marked him more than the acclaim. He was aware that some people would never truly appreciate his accomplishments. However, he felt more confident after recalling what the judges had said. He concluded that he could proceed without Claudio's approval. Every future life he touched would bring him recognition. He wrote once more on the poster before turning in for the night. Choices define destiny, not statistics. As his senior year drew to a close, Davi collected performance evaluations, certificates, and essays. He was aware that in order to apply to the institutions he hoped to attend, he would require 3 strong letters of recommendation. His chemistry advisor and literary teacher had already endorsed him. Claudio Mendez was the only notable name left, even though he remembered being teased. Davi thought that 2 years of biology classes together could lead to official recognition. After inhaling deeply, he made the decision to inquire. With official paperwork in hand, Davi went to Claudio's desk after class. He clarified why he wanted to go to prestigious universities like Stanford and Johns Hopkins. After listening in silence and reclining in his chair, the instructor said, "These institutions are highly selective, but I can review your application." His tone was one of bureaucracy rather than enthusiasm. By Friday, he requested that the student place the documents in the faculty mailbox. Hopeful, Davi thanked him. A few weeks later, Livia, Davi's advisor, summoned him to her office. She disclosed with concern that Claudio's letter had been unclear and unfinished. It suggested more practical job possibilities and implied a lack of readiness for high-pressure situations. Albeit mentioning technical aptitude, it was criticism cloaked in praise. Davi felt a knot in his stomach as he read passages. It wasn't merely incredulity. It was an effort to hurt his chances with assessors who were seeking firmness and conviction. Davi turned his rage into focus as he went back to his room and read the entire letter again. He made the decision that his destiny would not be determined by one opinion. He went over his application essays at night, emphasizing each sentence with passion and precision. He pictured the assessors recognizing something more in him than Claudio had explained. He made a self-promise to be so capable that no unclear letter could ever overwhelm him. Because of commitment and unflinching perseverance, the dream persisted. Gold and blue ribbons adorned the Jefferson East Theater, and metal chairs were arranged in neat rows, in their finest attire. Parents, siblings, and neighbors occupied every available area, while students adjusted borrowed gowns and caps. The administration arranged diplomas on stage. With his heart pounding, Davi sat in the front row of the honor roll. He concealed the nervousness of weeks of waiting for scholarship approvals and answers that would support his future behind his modest smile. The audience whistled and applauded as the names were read one by one. Teachers emphasized academic success by pointing to hard work and conquering challenges. Certificates for voluntary work, athletics, and the arts were given to classmates. The mood became more lively with each pronouncement. Neighbors held up homemade signs, and there was shouting from the rear and sustained applause when Davi's work at the science fair was announced. His eyes scanned the crowd for his mother and grandmother, but he remained steadfast. The principal abruptly revealed that a student with a medical profile would get the Bolsa Fundiceo Aurora, the night's greatest accolade. He also mentioned that Claudio Mendez, a faculty representative, and experts in the field were part of the evaluation group. For a second, Davi's heart stopped, taking the stage. The lecturer explained that medicine requires passion, perseverance, and discipline. After pausing to inhale deeply, he announced the winner. The audience erupted in cheers as the name, Davi Morera, reverberated around the hall. Davi approached the stage. Stunned, the same teacher who had made fun of him gave him the certificate. Claudio murmured, "The committee was impressed by your project, particularly your methodology." The young guy merely said, "Thank you, sir." His unwavering eyes promised that he would never forget that evening. He felt that every early dawn, every tear, and every humiliation had been turned into living evidence that fates are not determined by numbers as he walked down the stairs with his trophy in hand. Tell us where you are watching from before we head back. Make sure to subscribe if this tale resonates with you, because I have something very unique planned for you tomorrow. The campus of Imperial Medical University was spectacular, featuring state-of-the-art buildings, cutting-edge labs, and an extensive library. With his battered rucksack, Davi navigated hallways filled with young people from affluent homes using high-end laptops. He felt alienated, as though every aspect revealed his lowly beginnings. He felt a great deal of loneliness in the beginning, but he persevered because he remembered his grandma grinning at his graduation and his mother preparing meals at the hospital. He was there to establish his worth. The lecturers in his initial anatomy sessions spoke rapidly and expected prompt responses. Naturally, his classmates answered by reciting technical jargon that they were already familiar with before the session started. Despite his dedication, Davi found it difficult to keep up. He would go back to his room, go over the handouts he had borrowed, and stay up late. He was plagued by the worry of being caught as an intruder. He made a silent vow to not give up. He recorded all of his errors and used them as teaching moments. He was burdened with the weight of expressing possibilities in addition to books. One day, the students' efforts were noted by Professor Almeida, who oversaw the laboratory and stayed till closing time. He was impressed and gave him access to more resources and one-on-one counseling. Camila, a classmate, soon exchanged class summaries and suggested study groups. These minor actions were essential. Davi became aware for the first time that he was not entirely alone. The walls started to come down. He gradually built a network of people who would help him along the way. After several months, his efforts started to bear fruit. People noticed his well-written reports. He received high grades, and some teachers started calling him by name in the hallways. Once bashful, Davi now carried himself with pride as he moved among his peers. Every exam he passed reminded him that he wasn't there by accident. A strong foundation was being established. But he still had several years to go before he became a doctor. At last, he sensed that he was starting to fit in there. Professor Almeida asked Davi to participate in a neuron regeneration study during his sophomore year. In the laboratory, he spent endless days immersed in statistical studies and lengthy tables. For someone so young, he was able to document minuscule differences while observing experimental rats. His mentors were impressed by his commitment and quickly acknowledged him as a natural researcher. He felt his signature on reports had actual weight for the first time. Academically, the discredited boy was starting to establish himself. He was chosen to share some of his research at a student conference a few months later. Senior students and visiting specialists filled the auditorium. His speech was calm, but his hands shook. He used understandable language and organized clear images to explain difficult ideas. He was greeted by enthusiastic applause and sincere inquiries at the conclusion. He became more than just a diligent student as a result of that experience. He was also able to motivate and instruct others. Davi submitted a manuscript outlining novel techniques for brain plasticity analysis with the help of Almeida and several experts. The lengthy procedure involved reviewers challenging computations and asking for revisions. He addressed each critique patiently and lucidly. He was emailed months later to confirm that his work had been published in a reputable scientific journal. Tears ran down his cheeks as he saw his name printed. It was evidence that his voice had a place in a world that had previously been unthinkable to him. Not just academic affirmation, Davi recommended modifying a dissection approach during hands-on investigations to lower the possibility of harming sensitive structures. The invention became popular in labs and was colloquially known as the Morera procedure. Instructors cited the method's originator while discussing it in class. His co-workers gave him a fresh respect for Davi. There was profound recognition instead of a medal or trophy that could be seen. His name was now spoken outside of the classroom. The youngster who had been made fun of became a symbol. And that was just the start. Davi encountered the most difficult routine of his life when he started neurosurgery residency. He had to deal with 36-hour shifts, unforeseen phone calls, and restless nights. He frequently skipped meals as he rushed between wards and emergency rooms. His eyes burned. His body hurt. Yet his mind was sharp. Every restless night was an investment in real-world experience. And he knew it. It now took nearly superhuman stamina to fulfill his dream. He was permitted to help with a critical surgery during his 3rd month, as he saw the knife move under his supervisor's direction. His palms quivered beneath the sterile gloves. He gradually became more self-assured until he was asked to take baby steps. His breath came more quickly. Yet he was still precise. He heard a quick, "good job," as he finally took the forceps off, despite being only 2 words. They were extremely powerful. It was there that he realized he was at last in the world of achievers. Not every day was a success. He squandered valuable seconds, one early morning, when arranging the instruments. The harsh look from his supervisor was more painful than any reprimand. Dejected, he went back to his dorm room, but rather than give up, he went over the procedures and practiced every step until he was able to memorize it. He gave a faultless performance the next evening, receiving praise from the same manager. Every error served as a teaching moment, and every correction influenced his outlook. The residency valued unwavering. Davi told the anesthesiologists and assistants in the operating room that in order to maintain cognitive abilities, he would choose a hazardous but promising endovascular method. A few co-workers paused, recalling the customary procedure. "I take full responsibility." He made adjustments to the microscope, asked for certain catheters, and started the surgery. Sweat beads on his forehead were reflected by the bright lights. Every second counted. Every action determined her destiny. Knowing the danger of this bold move, everyone in the room held their breath, unable to comprehend who was performing surgery on his wife. Claudio stayed in the family room with his head in his hands as the procedure went on. Her previous remarks about having persistent headaches, which he had written off as stress, came back to him. In an attempt to stabilize the aneurysm, Davi carefully worked with coiling spirals on the other side of the wall. He could hear his lecturer laughing in his head. A chance meeting had come about because the lady he loved's life hinged on the exact ideal he had mocked. The next few hours became a silent struggle with time. Davi used millimeter movements to perform the coiling while being directed by visuals displayed on brilliant screens, knowing that any departure could result in instantaneous brain death. The crew watched in utter suspense. The flow stabilized once the final metal wire was placed. The vital indicators on the monitor were normal. The room emitted a collective sigh. But Davi remained expressionless. He repressed his feelings until later. They had saved a life. Davi thanked the residents and nurses as he took off his gloves. He reaffirmed his directives: constant observation, minimal sedation, and intense surveillance. Although there was a sense of relief, he avoided celebrating and kept his tone professional. He was aware that there was still a chance of problems. Nevertheless, he knew inwardly that he had done the unthinkable. She was breathing steadily now, the woman who had come in on the edge of death. The next step would be to confront something even more challenging, gazing into Claudio's eyes, which represent the eyes of the past. When the professor noticed the doctor coming, he got up in the waiting area. He briefly unable to recognize the adult visage in front of him, the lab coat's embroidered name, Dr. Davi Morera, then came to life. His face was etched with shock. For countless seconds, there was silence. First to speak, Davi said, "Your wife is stable." The procedure went well. Claudio parted his lips. But nothing came out. With tears in his eyes, he simply nodded. Recalling the youngster he had once made fun of, Davi didn't express regret or ask for thanks. He just stepped out into the well-lit corridor after explaining what to do next. If this story resonated with you, tell someone who needs motivation to stand up for what's right. Remember that empathy and respect have the capacity to change lives. And sign up for more transformational stories. Remember to never undervalue anyone based solely on their outward appearance.